Here's a sneak peek of this week's episode.
Buenos Aires is known as the Paris of South America.
I'm Scott.
And I'm Melissa.
And we're the Sunshine Travelers. Our passion is travel and sharing our experiences with those who enjoy it as much as we do, or those who want to learn more about travel, or even those who just want to live vicariously through our travel stories. No matter where you fall along that journey, get ready to hear about our first-hand experiences as we visit some of the most interesting and amazing places on Earth. In this week's episode, we join our guide Santiago as he shares his love and passion for his home country of Argentina. He'll take us through the city of Buenos Aires and its many neighborhoods that each have a history and culture of their own. Join us as we venture through this city in South America. Grab your passports and let's get started to Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is one of those places that's been on my bucket list of places to return with you, Melissa, and spend some time visiting as tourist. I've been there for work and got to do a little bit of tourist activities. We had one day where we were able to hit some of the highlights a few years ago, but let's hear from Santiago on whether or not that is enough time. So one of the best things about working for global companies is the opportunity to form lasting friendships with colleagues from all over the world. If you've been following our series on places we would like to spend more time exploring, beyond just a few days in town for work, Buenos Aires is one of them. Please join me in welcoming my friend Santiago as he takes us on a journey to Buenos Aires, Argentina. Welcome, Santiago.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself and, specifically, why are we talking to you about Buenos Aires?
All right. Well, I'm from Argentina to start, so that's a good reason for you to talk to me about Argentina. Yes, I am from Buenos Aires. I'll be 50 this year. So, and although I've been living outside of Argentina for some years now, I go back almost every year. And I'm always looking for something new to do. So always, I'm like digging to see what else is there that I have not seen, especially to show my girlfriend, a different thing from Buenos Aires. Otherwise, we just go back to the same place and then it's like, oh, well, yeah, we've done the thing. So it's good to try to discover new things.
Yeah. So, I would say, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, but Santiago is probably a little bit different than a lot of people that we talk to, because usually they're really good at digging in and exploring other places, but not where they live.
That's true. Yeah, we've talked to a lot of people who, have done that. So that's great that you try, even on your visits back home, to explore new places. That's super exciting. Yeah, for us to hear about.
And then I can tell just from following you on social media, you have, beyond just Argentina, you have a huge wanderlust and a love for photography as well.
Yes, we really like traveling. I mean, you've seen probably lots of pictures of food, but I like taking pics of the nice places we visit. And then it is a bit of a travel journal. So it's nice to go back to Instagram and then look at my own account. And it's like, oh yeah, remember when we went here or there? So yeah, it is nice. And there are plenty of places that I would like to see that I haven't seen and places that I would like to return to.
Yeah, we do that with our own stuff, especially like when we're preparing for a show and we'll go back and look at photographs and maybe posts from when we were there on social media stuff. And we'd be like, oh, remember when we did this or remember when we did that? And I agree. It's just a great journal of that time. And I love photography as well. I'm a hobbyist at best, but just looking through some of your pictures, it's really inspired even more that desire to go back, because I remember the things that we did while we were in Argentina with you, and I wanted to always take Melissa back and see Buenos Aires and do some of these things. But as I've been looking at your pictures, there's so much more to Buenos Aires than even what we saw on that, short visit.
Yes, well, hopefully I'll have some good tips on some places that you would like to visit.
And as we get started, I just wanted to say, I remember very distinctly when Scott was down there on the trip that he's specifically speaking of, where you got to go out and see some things, him calling me and saying, Mel, like, we have to come back here. I have to take you here. And I think this is the one destination that he has talked more about us going at some point than any other place in the world. So we are super excited to hear your suggestions.
And we've got a trip that we want to do in the very near future. We don't know exactly when yet. We had originally thought maybe next year we'd do it, but there's a lot of planning that's involved. But we want to go to Antarctica. And so Buenos Aires is the logical place for us to fly to get to Argentina and then start that trip. So when we do this, I know that's what we're going to do is we're going to start in Buenos Aires and go from there.
Yes, I know we'll talk about Buenos Aires today, but I always recommend people to go to Buenos Aires and to one or two other places when they go to Argentina, because if you're going to fly, for 10 hours or more, then just take advantage of that and try to see something else. There is plenty to see in Argentina as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get started. When I think of Buenos Aires, I think of the downtown. I think of great steaks, maybe Evita comes to mind, the cemetery, right? But you have thoughtfully put together a bit of itinerary or an agenda for us for someone who was going to visit and what they should see, how long they need, where should they stay, food, like you said, a bit of a foodie, and then when's the best time for them to visit?
Yes, that's a great question. I'll start from when, because if we're thinking weather-wise, I would probably recommend that you go like from February to May or from October to end of December, because otherwise it will be too hot and humid, or just the winter. So I guess my best recommendation would be mid-November to mid-December. So it's breezy, not too hot. Flowers are in bloom. You can see this tree called jacaranda, which is all over the city, and it has like purple flowers. So you can see like in avenues like full of these purple trees. You can Google this. You'll see pictures. It looks really nice. So that would be my ideal time if I could go there.
And so while we're talking about weather, help me out. My geography may be failing me, but you're pretty close to the equator, right? In Argentina?
Well, I don't know if I would say close.
Much closer than we are, at least.
But yeah. But I would say, just to give you an idea, this is like semi-tropical climate. So that's what it's considered to be.
Yeah.
So in the summer, it can get quite hot. And then in the winter, quite rainy and miserable.
And we should remind our listeners too, because it's in the Southern Hemisphere, though, that the summer is what you're talking about, right? The spring is November, December, and then the summer. So January then is what you're saying is avoid January because that's the hottest time. So just keeping in mind that, the seasons are flip-flopped for people who are in North America and in Europe.
Yes, good point. Yes.
Take us on the journey then. We know now when we should go, and where are we going?
Yes, I would say that, I don't know, maybe because it's my city and I like it, but I would be there for no less than 10 days. So then you get to see the capital city of Buenos Aires and then some of the parts of the province of Buenos Aires. So if you see in the map, it's funny that they both have the same name, but you have the, like DC. Yeah. So Buenos Aires, the city, and then the surrounding is Buenos Aires, the province. There is plenty to do, from museums to watching football or soccer matches, concerts, and then there's the architecture and then the countryside. So out of all these things in Buenos Aires, if I went downtown, I would visit the Recoleta neighborhood because that's one of the oldest neighborhoods and the one that has the most European feel. Buenos Aires is known as the Paris of South America, and that's because at the end of the 18th century, lots of people went to Europe, and back then Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world. And then these people just saw some palace in France, and they were like, I want one of those. So then they got the architect and the materials, and then they built the same thing in Buenos Aires. And then other rich families did the same, and they're like, well, I want one that is bigger than my neighbors. And then this competition between rich people made, some parts of Buenos Aires really similar to Paris. And plenty of that remains. Of course, progress has taken some of that, but you can find in the center like Avenida de Mayo, which is the avenue that goes from the penthouse where the president works, and you might have seen in the Evita movie, to the Congress. that's full of these type of buildings. Some people say that it looks like La Gran Via in Madrid. And then there you can take tours of some of these buildings like Palacio Barolo. They have lots of sky bars that you can visit there. So it's quite nice for the center and for Recoleta for this European vibe.
See, I didn't realize that was the name of the neighborhood. I thought that was the name of the cemetery that you took us to. I guess
Yes,
one in the same.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And I would just say for people that are listening, this is definitely one of those places that I would recommend that you go on Viator or somewhere like that and book a walking tour of the city. Someone who can take you through, explain the history. You can see all the beautiful architecture that Santiago was talking about, but then they can tell you the stories that go along with it, because the stories, because we had a fabulous guide named Santiago who did all of his research and was very prepared to take us around. But the stories that go along with the neighborhood and the area are just as phenomenal. So I would definitely recommend that.
I would recommend that also for the cemetery itself. I know that it sounds creepy that I'm recommending that you visit a cemetery, but it is like an architectural marvel. You see all these crypts that have different architectural styles, and this is where the rich and famous has been buried. So there are like really big monuments, all over. And it is really nice if somebody can tell you, well, this is the place where this guy lays, and that's the story, and this family this, and so it makes more sense. You can still like it, but I don't know. I'm a fan of walking tours. So,
and the way that Scott described it to me after returning there, that it was almost the same as what you just described as the neighborhoods, right? The families are then trying to outdo each other with how they buried their loved ones as well. Then,
yes,
and we even saw mausoleums and crypts that had HVAC systems in it, right? I mean, it was crazy what some of these people did, but they were demonstrating their wealth. So
that sounds like number one, top of the list. Like you have to do that, right? Like that's the number one thing. And then that's what Scott had talked about. Yeah. And then, so what would you say? You mentioned museums. So what are our can't miss museums?
Yes, you have I was going to say it in Spanish, but the Latin American Museum of Art. And there are lots of collections from artists from different places in Latin America. Then you have close to that the what's in English, museums, and it has like the classics. So you will see a lot of paintings from European painters from the Renaissance. So you can see that, and that's for free. The previous one I mentioned is not free, but there are many museums in Buenos Aires that are free of charge. Then there's another one of contemporary art, also free of charge. And they're all located in the Palermo neighborhood. Palermo is the biggest neighborhood in Buenos Aires, and it's divided like in 7 different pieces, and all of them with their funny names like Palermo Soho and Palermo Hollywood. And depending on what the area of Palermo is known for, then that's where the name comes from. So, for example, Palermo Hollywood is where all the TV studios are. So that's why it got the name. Then the Soho has this bohemian side, and the shops and the nice graffiti places, and it's really hipster, I would say.
And so the word is Palermo.
Palermo is that's where also I would recommend people to stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was going to be my next question: is where should you stay when you're visiting Buenos Aires?
Yeah, so you should stay in Palermo.
In the city.
In any of the Palermo subdivisions, because all of them are like close to transportation, and then also quite close to the sites. So I mean, you can take sometimes the subway, sometimes you need a taxi, but everything is like not too far. I mean, let's keep in mind that Buenos Aires is a really big city, so I don't know if it's like 2 times the size of Paris. So it might take you at least 30 minutes to go anywhere from Palermo.
And do you have any recommendations for where people should stay? Besides just the area, like something specific?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know any hotels in Palermo I can recommend you, but there are lots of boutique hotels there. So, I mean, I'm sure that there is something that you can Google.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sure.
I don't know any brand in particular.
Yeah, Airbnb, through Airbnb or boutique hotels, stuff like that. It's probably better than some of the larger chains anyway.
Yes. Recoleta is also a good neighborhood to stay.
Okay.
It's closer to downtown, and there's also plenty to do there. So, either Palermo or Recoleta would be the places that I would recommend. Some people stay in San Telmo, which is the oldest neighborhood in Buenos Aires, and it's really close to downtown. But I guess it's a matter of preference. I've had people go to any of these neighborhoods, and they all had a good time. I guess maybe I like Palermo more, and I think it's an old neighborhood, but it, like 20 years ago, it started getting really, really good with lots of restaurants, and property was like redeveloped. So there is a really nice vibe there.
Awesome. Yeah. So then what else?
What are we going to eat while we're there?
Okay. Yeah. What are we going to eat?
Well, in Palermo, you'll find a lot of places. And one might think that Argentina is a place where you can get only beef. And maybe that was the case in the 80s. But since then, a lot has changed. And you can, there are restaurants from anywhere, any place in the world. So you can find Indian, Chinese, you name it, we have it. That said, of course, I recommend you to go for beef, because that's the main thing. Argentinian cuisine is based on, as Argentina being a country of immigrants, you might find things that are familiar to you, like pasta and pizza and whatnot. But the main thing is to have beef, because it's grass-fed. Those cows are happy and are walking around, and then you can tell when you eat the meat. One thing that you might see in many restaurants, what they do is they bring it to the table, and then they cut it with a spoon, just to show you how tender the meat is.
Wow.
I remember going to a restaurant, and I think the meat came from a cow, but I don't think it was the beef that you ordered for us.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's a good point, because we eat everything from the cow. So you might find, the regular cuts like New York strip, and then ribs and whatnot. But then we also eat the innards, so like sweetbreads, or the intestine, or for the brave, the testicles, which is, again, something I've never had. But apparently when you go to one of these countryside places, they offer that if you want to try it.
I don't think he had ever had it, but I think he did try to get it for us.
Yes.
We always had to be careful with Santiago when he started ordering, because we never knew what might show up to the table.
But all of the things that we don't typically eat are actually very healthy for you, right? I mean, that's
So all of these, it's you think about it and you think of fear factor.
Yeah.
But it is nice if it's nicely prepared, then it's super nice. Of course, some of these parts might be too fatty. So if I'm thinking of like intestine, it's just mostly fat. So it has to be made in a way that it comes out crispy out of the grill. So then you feel, it can be like if you had tried chicharrón.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it might have that type of feel in your mouth. Sweetbreads, I love it. I don't know if your cardiologist would say, yeah, go for it. But it is very tasty. And
everything in moderation, right?
Yes, they marinate them. You can get them like in champagne sauce, or like with lemon. Just be brave and just have them. You won't regret it.
I think that's great advice, right? Just to try something. That's the opportunity for travel, is trying something that you wouldn't normally get to try. And if you don't like it, you don't like it, but at least have that experience and not pass up on that. I think that's awesome. Is there anywhere in particular, or you just, in the neighborhood you're in, just kind of do your research to see what people will recommend, and ask locals, I guess? Or how do you recommend finding restaurants that are good?
I'm sure that every neighborhood has like a good steakhouse that you can go to, and given the quality of the meat, I would say that 90% of the time it's going to be fine. But if I would have to recommend you a place, I would say go to Don Julio. That has won Michelin star. The guide was actually, I think, at the beginning of the year or at the end of last year in Argentina. And then they gave some stars to some restaurants in Buenos Aires, and then they also recommended some others. So you can check their website, and then you'll find a list of all the ones that they have listed as their favorites. But as a local, although Don Julio is a very touristy place, I will definitely go there because it's going to be great. Then in Palermo, there is one called El Preferido de Palermo. So Palermo's favorite in English. And they have typical Argentinian food, and it is also really good. Then there is one, again, I'm a local, but for a touristic experience, I will go to one called Fogon, which was on TripAdvisor's a number one thing to do in Buenos Aires last year, and we actually went to it. And in this one, you're sitting around the grill, and they're cooking the meat in front of you, and you're participating in the cooking. So they teach you what they're doing, and it's a bit interactive, and it was a very nice experience. So
that's
I would
good.
definitely recommend that one.
Yeah, that's awesome because then you learn a little bit. Scott and I always like to have those kind of experiences or do cooking classes or something like that. And so much of the time we'll come back home and try to recreate that for ourselves or for guests or whatever. So I think that's awesome. That's an awesome recommendation.
Yes, there is another one. I think it's called the Argentinian Experience with a similar vibe. You go there, you learn how to make empanadas, and then they will grill something for you. They tell you about Argentinian wine. So, those, they're always nice when you go abroad because then you get something from the culture that, if nobody locally is telling you, then you wouldn't know.
Yeah, one of the things we love to do when we visit a new area is we just start asking the people around us who work there and who live there, what should we do? And then when they start giving us the standard places, we'll ask the follow-up question, do you eat there? Right? Tell us where you eat. And then we really get into some great places that are very much part of the culture.
Yes. Well, this one is going to be funny because my favorite restaurant is called Kansas. And it's an American-style barbecue place. But it is like fusion. So they have barbecue ribs that are made the American way, but then everything else is like Argentinian style. And every time I go there, it's awesome. So I guess what I like is like consistency. I've been going there for 15 years or so, and it has always been really good. So I will have the New York strip there, for example, because it is amazing. Then if I need to go more local, I'm trying to think. There's one called Anchoita, which is a bit new, and they have their own, like the food that you get on your table, they control everything. So they own cows, and then they own the butcher place, and then everything when it comes in front of you has been controlled by the same company. So, you know that the quality of the meat is of a certain quality, and then everything they do is of quality. So that's a restaurant that I really like.
Yeah, that's similar to what we would call farm to table.
Okay.
And there's one here near Jacksonville where we live where everything is sourced either from their own farm or from a local farm, right? Mm-hmm. And so if it's in season, you can eat it. If it's not in season, they won't be serving it.
Yes.
So you mentioned 10 days. So what we've talked about so far, how many days should we spend doing those things in the city to just have a leisurely pace and not be rushed? How many days is that?
Well, I said 10, and I was counting that you would spend a couple of days in the countryside. In one of these, we call them estancias. So some of these are like huge mansions that, back then, 100 years ago, they belonged to one family. But then these days they have been refurbished. So then they're like either hotels, or you can go there for the day, and then you can see a gaucho show. And of course, they give you barbecue, the empanadas, and then you have like the whole experience. And there's a swimming pool. You can, play cricket. You can do some outdoor activities and have a great time for the day, or you can spend a couple of days and disconnect from the madness of the city. So these are really good. There is one called Estancia La Candelaria, which is like a French castle. You can probably see that one on my Insta profiles from a couple months ago. And then Estancia Villa Maria, it's very nice. It's not a castle, but it's also a very nice property. So I would recommend that you take a couple of days to do this.
Okay, perfect. And so how far are we talking about outside the city?
I would say 2 hours.
Okay. And so do we need to rent a car then to be
You can arrange that with the Estancia. So they can arrange that somebody takes you there and then returns you to your hotel.
Okay.
So in the city, the Buenos Aires, we don't need to rent a car. Just use taxi,
No.
public transportation, all of those type of ways.
Yes, you can. Well, we have taxis, we have Uber, and then there are a couple more apps that you can use. There's the metro that takes you pretty much anywhere. I think it's like 7 metro lines. It gives you like a New York vibe.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I have buses everywhere. So you won't need a car. It would be crazy to get a car. No need for it.
In the city. Okay. Good to know.
But when you are traveling outside, if you wanted to turn maybe turn it into a bit of a road trip, you could rent a car and
Yes,
it's easy
definitely.
to drive.
Yes, it's just that herds, any of those that are available there, you can get a car.
One of the things we love doing is, when you have a car, you can control your trip a lot more. So if you see something interesting, you just pull over and you check it out and explore, or, you can go straight there, but you're in control of that. And so we always like to ask, is this a place where we would be safe, okay, whatever? Is it easy driving there? Do we need to know anything like, drive on the opposite side of the road, the opposite side of the car, all of those things?
Yes, I will not drive because traffic is crazy. And then depending on the political climate, you might get a lot of demonstrations of people on the street. I believe that the current government does not tolerate that, but you never know. So you would just be sitting in your car like, okay, we're not moving, it's not going anywhere. So I would just use public transportation. And then most of these places are in walking distance from one another.
Okay.
So, some might be like 3 kilometers from one another. Some others might be closer. So it really depends on how you organize your day. So that's why it's important.
Are you talking about in the city right now or out in the countryside?
Okay. In the city.
Yeah.
Yes.
But when you go out to the countryside?
No, then you're fine.
Yeah.
And once you get out of the city, then it's just smooth driving.
And then do you guys drive on the same side of the road as the US or?
Yes.
opposite?
Yes, we do.
All right. And same side of car on the left?
Yes.
Driver on the left?
I got that from the Brits.
Yeah.
But then they changed.
Okay.
Yeah, we like to talk to people about that because often, we hear from people, oh, we're afraid to rent a car internationally. And that's not been our experience. But there's some places like cities where it doesn't make sense to have a car because you got to find parking, like you said, traffic and, other things that may impact that. So, use those public transportations. But then when you go on that road trip out to the countryside, which I think we want to try to venture there next in the conversation, is you could rent a car easily, go out there, enjoy the countryside. So tell us a little bit, one thing that I did not realize, and this probably has to do with Buenos Aires and the surrounding area also being called Buenos Aires, but I didn't see any kind of, when we were in the city, I didn't see a sea or I didn't see any kind of cliffs or anything like that. But I look at your pictures and I see cliffs and I see marine life and seals or sea lions and all kinds of stuff there.
Yes. Well, the sea lions are from when I was in Mar del Plata, which is a town that is like 5 hours from Buenos Aires.
Okay.
So then that's on the coast. So it's like a beach resort. So all along the coast in southern Buenos Aires, you can find several places with like dunes and, there's water and there is wildlife. In Buenos Aires city, we have the river and it's the widest river in the world. So if you get to the coast, we don't have, it's been, some parts have been gained from the river. And then there is like a wall. I don't know how to explain that.
Seawall.
Yeah, so versus if you remember Montevideo, they have the beach. So they left the beach untouched and then the roads go along the coast. But in Buenos Aires, they built like a boulevard and then there is this wall that blocks the water. So we don't use the river in Buenos Aires besides for fishing for anything else. If you go to the province, then you can get access to the water like, you would in Montevideo or in Miami.
I think in the countryside, your recommendation then is to go to some of these old castles or, buildings that have been built. Spend some time out there. Anything else outside on the countryside?
I think the estancias are the best option because those are like around 2 hours from the city. If you want to go to any other place, then it is like a bit longer way. So we're talking about 4 or 5 hours or 6.
So if somebody has more time, so if you want to venture out and do the 4, 5, 6, you mentioned, so there's a beach resort. Okay.
Yes.
So then tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So there are several beach resorts along the coast. So you might find, the first one, 4 hours from the city, there's a huge lagoon. Then you keep on going, and each town has a different vibe. So Mar del Plata being the biggest. If you look at pictures of Mar del Plata from the internet, it has like a Monaco vibe. So when it was built in the 1900s, that was where the rich and powerful used to go for January, for example. So then you see all these buildings that look super nice, but then eventually became the most popular place to go on the coast. So now it's like a middle class type of location, or for middle class. And then along the coast, you might have, other places that have like surfer vibe or little town that is really cute, and then it also has access to the water. So it really depends on what kind of holiday you want to have. Then you would choose Mar del Plata because it has everything, or you will go to the smaller places that are more secluded, and then nobody's gonna bother you when you are at the beach.
Okay. And so then the time of the year that you've talked about then, what is the water like? And is it, easy to swim, or what is it like there?
Yeah. Well, this is the Atlantic, so the water is quite chilly.
Okay.
That's something to keep in mind. People will normally go from mid-December until March, but that's when it's crazy because every Argentinian goes to the coast. So, but if you're traveling to Buenos Aires in November, then you can still go. I guess the water might be a bit chillier than in December, but that doesn't mean that it won't be enjoyable.
Yeah, we live on the Atlantic, and so we're used to that, right? Is because we're further north on the Atlantic, the waters are quite chilly, up until around May, June timeframe.
But I love that what you said is this is where you're going to find that the Argentinians go for their vacation. So you're going to get a much more local vibe than going to, I don't know, a beach that Americans would go to, for example, right? Yes. So I think that would be awesome for somebody who just wants to have, that kind of experience. Where do the locals go for, holiday? So that's awesome.
Yes. If I had 4 or 6 hours, I would fly.
Okay.
So I would rather go to the Iguazu Falls or to Mendoza for the wine, or to Bariloche for the mountains and the lakes. So I will use my time in a different way.
Okay. So you mentioned, so so beach is an option, but if you don't want to do that, so then let's go back because I am interested in the falls as well. So then let's go back. So you fly then if you're going to go to the beach, or you fly somewhere else to go some of these other places you're mentioning?
You can fly to Mar del Plata also for 1 hour, but then if you fly for 2 hours, then you're in the border with Brazil.
Okay.
And then you can go to the Iguazu Falls, and I was probably spend 2-3 days there, and that will blow your mind. Mar del Plata is okay, but the Iguazu Falls is one of the wonders of the world, or the nature wonders of the world. So I guess it's a matter of putting your hours in the better place.
Okay, because you can go to the beach anywhere, quote
Yes.
unquote, right? So then you're going to see something. Okay, and that's awesome. And so you correct me if I'm wrong. I understand there are places to stay then that are right near the falls. Then
Yes.
you can spend some time exploring.
You will need 1 day to go to the Brazilian side of the falls, and then 1 day to go to the Argentinian side of the falls. There are hotels inside of the national park. You can feel that you live in the jungle. So you go out in the balcony, and then it's like you're in the jungle. So it's pretty unique.
Melissa,
Definitely recommend it.
Okay.
Do you realize this is 2 back-to-back recommendations to go there?
Yes. Well, I technically recommended or asked the other person we were talking to about it, and then you get to go to another country as well, right? So then you
can cross to Brazil as well.
Cross to Brazil and that. So I've been seeing a lot about the falls recently, and so I was like, oh, Scott, we have to go there. So I'm with you. I think I I would put that on my list. But you mentioned 2 or 3 other places. So go ahead and tell us those. Yes.
So there are 2-3 provinces in Argentina where we produce wine. You might know Malbec. So that is mainly produced in the Mendoza province. And that's also a trip on its own. So I would recommend, take 3 days. You fly to Mendoza. You can stay in one of these wineries. They have hotels there. So you're just imagine you're in the swimming pool in front of the Andes, sipping some wine every day for 3 days. Or you can take like a bike tour, and then you go from vineyard to vineyard. And then, of course, they give you something to drink. I don't know how you get back to the hotel after that. People do it. Yes, awesome. But that's also a very nice province, and you can do rafting in Mendoza as well. So there's plenty to do there. And then the other option I was recommending was Bariloche, that is ski resort town in Patagonia, and then you can go there and see the Andes, but in a different way, because it's like the higher peaks and with eternal snow, and there are lots of lakes. It looks like the Alps.
Oh, wow. So if you wanted to go and ski, is that so when do you need to be there, or is the elevation high enough that it's same time frame, or no?
You would need to go in June, July, and August.
Okay.
That's quite something to think about. That's a break from our really hottest months.
Yeah.
Somewhere where you could go that you could go snow skiing.
Yeah.
And so you've mentioned several places then. So I assume that's three separate places, 3 separate flights, correct? Because of where they're located. How easy, difficult, or expensive is it once you're in Argentina then to take those flights to the other places?
I don't think flights are particularly cheap in Argentina. I mean, of course, now living in Europe, if I want to fly somewhere, it's relatively cheap.
Right.
But also distances are quite short. So I guess what I need to think when I tell you about the price is that Buenos Aires from Bariloche is probably 1,000 kilometers away or so.
Okay.
So we're talking about maybe $250 per leg or a trip back and forth.
Okay.
So maybe that's reasonable. I don't know how much it is to go from New York to Miami.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It sounds very similar to prices that we would pay in the U.S. to travel from state to state. So.
Yeah. But it sounds like it's definitely worth it. And then you have a lot more time to spend in the destinations instead of just spending time in the car, just depending on how much time you have.
Yes. I mean, you can also take the bus. It takes forever, but the experience you get from seeing the country, that's something. So I know, and when I mean the bus, I don't mean, you see me, it's not like I'm like really tight, like in economy on a plane. These are buses that have seats that turn into beds. So you are really comfy. So you might travel for 20 hours, but it goes flat. So you really...
So that's very interesting because I've never heard of that. Yeah. So where do you look online if you're interested in booking something like that? Like, is that a particular company that does that, or?
No, they all have them.
Okay.
They have them. You have different categories of seats. So these buses might have, like the lower part of the bus has these beds, and then the upper part, it might be like half a bed. So they have like different seating arrangements. So maybe it's the whole bus is with all these seats. I know that there is one that is like your own little cabin. Like if you were on a train, that you kind of like close to the curtain. And then there are these ones that are like not as comfy, but still all right. I mean, way better than a plane. I'm thinking, so you can compare business class or first class.
Okay.
That kind of comfort, not as fancy, I would say, but definitely comfy.
Okay. So if you have more time, that would be just a completely different experience. And I'm guessing like if you wanted to, you could do that in one direction and then fly back or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Very good. I have not heard of that. So I'm glad you shared that.
Santiago, is there anything else that we've missed in Argentina that we need to know about?
I mean, there's so much in Buenos Aires that you can see the most beautiful bookstore in the world, the Ateneo Gran Splendid, which is a bookstore that has been built inside of what it used to be a theater. It was chosen the nicest bookstore by National Geographic, I think 2019. It's still on list as the first one or the second one, something to check out. Then there's plenty to do with history, with the Pink House and the cathedral. Some of the Colón Theater, for example, I recommend that you do the tour of the theater, and then you can also go see a play because the acoustics of that place are insane. It's one of the top 3 opera houses in the world, so you definitely should check it out. If we go back to when to go to Argentina, maybe you don't listen to anything I have said and you only check what is happening in Argentina at the moment. I don't know, maybe your favorite band is playing in Buenos Aires. So maybe you go just because the concert is happening in June. Maybe the weather is not great, but seeing a concert in Argentina is quite special. We're really passionate. You can, if you don't believe me, look for AC/DC in River Plate Stadium 2009, and then you know what I mean. The same for soccer matches. You can go see Boca Juniors. When you visit La Boca neighborhood, you can also visit the stadium. There's a museum there. The River Plate team also has a museum in the Belgrano neighborhood. There's Chinatown in Buenos Aires also. It's quite small compared to New York's Chinatown, but it's worth checking out. Things that you should not miss. Try the ice cream. It's really good. If you like Italian gelato, this is the same or better. Sorry, I might be a bit biased there, but I'm kidding.
You see him looking at me, right? That's my that's my thing. So same but better. Okay, I have definitely got to.
She's got her laptop up and over there. So I think she's booking a flight right now.
Yes, and am I forgetting anything? Tango show, you don't miss that. And there is the Astor Piazzolla Theater that it's super nice inside. You can go for dinner and see a tango show in there. There are some of those in Puerto Madero as well, which is the newest neighborhood in Buenos Aires. Also, it's the safest. Then I will go to the Polo Championship Finals if you go in maybe the end of November. If you like polo or if you know anything about polo, we have the best players in the world, so maybe you can check that. I have managed to do that once. It's always the championship ends before I travel every year. So not that 1 year, but so that's why it's maybe end of November when it happens. I don't know, there are churches to see, old buildings, the architecture part, there is a ton to check there. So I'm happy to share notes or anything that I have said with links to places. So if that is useful for anybody, then happy to share it.
Yeah, that would absolutely be awesome. And then we could definitely share those in the show notes. I mean, it sounds like that if you go and you can't find something to do, that you've really missed out. Because it sounds like no matter when you go, you're going to be able to find a match or a concert or a play or something, right? In sports and culture, in whatever. And it also sounds like that we don't need 10 days. It sounds like we need about
30 days.
30 days, or I was going to say 10 months.
Yes, but really consider going to see something because it is really convenient from the financial point of view as well. I recall when Taylor Swift was in Buenos Aires, people were flying from the US to Buenos Aires because it was cheaper to buy the tickets in Buenos Aires, including the flight, than to buy the ticket in the US.
Wow. Yeah, they were ridiculously expensive here. So interesting. Wow.
So it sounds like one of the things that you would recommend that people put on their packing list is some good walking shoes.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, just walk around. And one thing I always say, Buenos Aires is a big city. We always see in the news that bad things happen. What is important is not to grab people's attention. So, leave your Rolex at home and mind your surroundings and you'll be fine.
Perfect. Yeah. And
I think that's true no matter where you go.
Anywhere. So let's talk a little bit about like dress, for example, and then what people do need to pack. Like what is a typical, what do people typically wear? What do you need to know? Like if you go in the churches, that kind of thing, so that you don't stick out as a tourist, right? So that you blend in and you respect the culture and what locals do.
Yeah, I guess, if you go in the summertime, then shorts and flip-flops or running shoes and a pique shirt, then you're fine.
Okay.
I guess maybe if you go with your camo shorts, you grab people's attention because they're not as common. It's like, why is this guy with camo shorts? Maybe they will identify you as a tourist because that's not common. But then other than that, I mean, I guess it's the same that people wear anywhere. When it comes to the church, I think we're relaxed. So I don't
Okay.
think you will offend any Catholic if you go into the cathedral with shorts. I think it'll be fine. Maybe in some of these places, at least I remember one of these palaces in close to downtown that they had a dress code. But I mean, if you plan on going to the theater, just take a shirt, something that looks nice, and then you can use that for several occasions. Then you're fine.
Okay. Sounds good. So it sounds like just, like some of those places, just research then if you plan to go. So, okay. Great.
That's probably one of those places where if you took some layers, you'd be good as well. Lightweight layers if you're going to go during the summer.
Yes.
So if you do decide to go in June, July, August, what additionally, what temperatures do we need to expect? What kind of clothes to pack then?
Well, 32 Fahrenheit.
Okay.
So it will be cold and humid. The problem is humidity. So it kind of like goes through you. So if you have something that can block that, then you're fine. I mean, scarf and gloves and hat, and then you're good.
Okay. Good to know.
Remember when Santiago would come to Atlanta in the middle of summer, he would have his scarf and gloves in the office.
Yeah, because I was coming from the winter.
I was going to say, you were saying for the air condition being so cold, but yeah, you were coming from the winter. That's true.
Yeah. Maybe one last thing to recommend, because you might not know, but the financial situation of Argentina is not great at the moment. It hasn't been for many years, but now it's particularly bad, which works in your favor coming with dollars into the country. So, maybe if there is something you want to do that where you are is expensive, maybe you can do it in Buenos Aires and it won't feel expensive to you. So, for example, you can go to the most expensive hotel and have afternoon tea like in England. Maybe that's affordable in Buenos Aires versus if you want to do it in Europe or in the US, where you would pay 3 times as much.
Okay.
So this works for pretty much anywhere, unless it is an experience that is made for tourists, then you pay a bit more.
So it sounds like he's telling us that now's the time to go.
Yes. And so what do we need to prepare? Most places take like credit cards. We need to get cash out of the ATM when we arrive. How do we need to prepare to be able to pay for things?
Yeah, I think if you have Visa and MasterCard, then you're fine. If you have diners, then I guess it's the same as in any other country in the world. Nobody wants to take it. So I would just take my credit card, and then you need to take some cash. Maybe you need that. I mean, with Uber, you can pay through the app, and it's no problem. But for tipping, maybe cash, and then in some places that you might need to use cash. But then I cannot tell you how much. I mean, I would just exchange 100 at a time.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So you mentioned diners, and I want to point out for everybody, the reason that these guys are mentioning Diners Club is because the company that they worked for when they worked together, that was the corporate card, was this Diners Club card. And we were just always like, what? Like, are you going to get to a place that it wouldn't?
I think he says that because he would end up having to pay because we had this Diners Club card and no one would take it.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, yes. Because we always laughed. We were like, why does this company have a Diners Club card? Who uses that? But now you also did not mention American Express. So Visa and MasterCard.
Yeah, I think Visa and MasterCard would be the best ones to use anywhere, not only Argentina. I think American and Diners are the ones that stores are like, I don't think so.
Yeah. We usually travel with both American Express and Visa travel cards just because you don't know. You touched on something that we probably need to mention, tipping. So what is tipping around the world is very different than it is in the US. So what is typical in Argentina?
It is not mandatory. So that's for once. You don't need to give tip. It is a token of appreciation for the service you have received. If it is really good, then you go 10, 15, 20, whatever you want. But if you don't leave anything, nobody's going to chase you from, out of the store. I would recommend you give some tip, but it's also based on how much you like the service. If you don't like it, then I don't, if I don't like the service.
Okay, good to know. And then that can be added to the bill on a credit card, or you need to pay that
Yes.
in cash.
Yes, it depends on the shop.
Okay.
If they have whatever system they use. Sometimes you can do it. Sometimes you need to leave it separately.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I think we could probably continue to ask Santiago questions all day, but we do want to get to 3 questions that we ask all of our guests on the show. And the first one is, what is your favorite place in the world that you have visited? And if you have any kind of story around it, please share that.
Yes. Well, I really like my country, so I'm going to take Argentina out of the equation. So, but recently we traveled to Singapore, and that was my first time in Asia, and I really liked it. So I don't know if it's the contrast that is so different, or, I guess my mind was blown because of all the things that I didn't know. We go to the food court in this place, and it's like, what is that? I don't know what to choose because I don't know what it is. And then the fact that to understand that there is like a whole culture that I was not aware of. I travel and I know food from many places, but this was like, especially in those hawker centers that have like Indian food and then, Asian food from different countries. It was like mind blowing. So that I really like. I don't have a story about Singapore though. I have a story about Uruguay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But Singapore, though, is definitely a very expensive country to visit. Is that not right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I've heard from people who have been there. So the second question that we would ask you is, what is on your bucket list? Something you haven't done yet, but you want to.
Yes, I would like to go to Japan, which is something that I haven't done, and we've discussed it for many years, but we never have the time to do it. So maybe one day. I think I would also like the fact that when you go somewhere and you don't understand anything, which is an experience that is really hard to get these days because the world is so connected that no matter where you go, somebody will, speak in English to you. You will find some common ground to try to do something. But I think that Japan will be a challenge. And I think that experience from when I was a kid going to the US and not knowing the language, that adds some excitement to the trip.
Mm.
Any particular place in Japan or kind of a road trip?
I guess we'll visit several places, but I want to go to Osaka. I guess it's the food capital. So I want to go there and try some nice things.
I look forward to all the pictures. And finally, is what's next on your list? Where are you going next?
Next, we're going to Thailand in a couple of months. Again, never been there, so also looking forward to that.
Are you going to Bangkok or?
Yeah, we land in Bangkok, and then we're going to go to Koh Samui, which is one of the islands that it's close to Bangkok. So really,
we hear really good things about that. We have a lot of friends who travel either full time or a lot, and Thailand's one of their favorite places to visit.
And is that the place where you visit? Is that so the island? So it's like a beach resort vacation.
Yes,
plan.
It's one of those like you do nothing all day,
Awesome.
So you relax.
Good.
Yes.
Well, excellent. Well, Santiago, thank you for taking the time to talk to us, and thanks for sharing your love and passion of Argentina. And I tell you, Santiago is the best tour guide that I think I've ever had, and really encouraging the desire for me to want to take Melissa back and do some of the things that we did while we were there in Buenos Aires. So, thank you, Santiago.
Well, thank you. I always want people to have a good time when they go to Argentina. So, hope the listeners that take the leap of faith go that far and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
When we're planning a trip, we love to use Viator to find and book all of our experiences at our destination. Our favorite way to book local experiences is through Viator. You can do more with Viator. It's one site, 300,000 plus travel experiences that you'll remember. We like using Viator because of the free cancellation policy. Plans may change, so you can receive a full refund if you cancel at least 24 hours in advance of most experiences. Book your spot now and pay later with the Reserve Now, Pay Later feature. And of course, before booking, we always read the trusted reviews because Viator has 4.3 stars from 140,000 plus Trustpilot reviews. Go to sunshinetravelers.com/Viator to explore and book your next local experience.
One of the most interesting things I learned today is that there's a city of Buenos Aires and also a province called Buenos Aires. In part of my research after our interview with Santiago, I learned that the city of Buenos Aires is not the province of Buenos Aires. So the city is an autonomous district that has been since the year 1880. And that explains why when I look at his pictures on social media, we see things like mountain cliffs and the sea, because I definitely don't remember seeing those things when we were in the city.
Wow, Scott, I enjoyed this so much and I learned a lot. And if I remember correctly, was this the trip where you got to do those things in Buenos Aires because you got down there and they were like, oh, today's a holiday?
Yes.
So
it snuck up on them.
You laugh about that, but it actually worked out good because it was one of the opportunities where you got to see something in the city. So I really haven't done much research on Argentina other than knowing about Buenos Aires from this trip and you telling me that we need to go visit the cemetery with a guide and also eating at one of their famous Argentinian steakhouses. I've also seen a lot of people travel to Iguazu Falls. And so that I'm glad that Santiago mentioned that because that is definitely on my bucket list.
You know, I wonder what would be the possibility of getting Santiago to go with us on a trip to Argentina and be our guide to all these wonderful places.
Yeah, that would be amazing. We'll have to find out sometime when he's going to be there and see if we can coordinate that because that would be awesome. I was also glad to hear him say about several things that this might be touristy, but it's worth doing, or this restaurant might be for tourists, but that he would eat there. I think sometimes when we travel, we worry that sometimes things might be touristy and not an authentic experience. But Santiago found value in doing those things, such as taking part in the Gaucho experience when visiting one of the states in the countryside.
So, you know, we found this out also when we went to the Bahamas. And we stayed over on Paradise Island. And, you know, we were talking about whether or not we should go to the Margaritaville. But we found out that touristy place actually had local food, local cuisine, and it was really good. Not just their hamburgers.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Because I was a little bit hesitant at first, right? About, especially when we look for places to go eat. And it's like, oh, Margaritaville. But it got so many good reviews and we kind of ran out of places to go. So you're right. So I think you just have to, you know, look at all that and take all that into account. And sometimes just, you know, take a chance. And you never know what experience you're going to have.
Yeah, I mean, if you read hundreds of thousands of reviews and they all say it's good, I'd take a chance on that.
Yeah. I always love going to places that it's like tourists and locals alike like it, right? That it's just that kind of experience. And it sounds like that there's several of those in and around Buenos Aires.
Kind of like La Paria in Cancun.
Absolutely.
I keep coming up with all these other places, but
where that's true. I mean, I haven't really thought about this concept, you know, before. You typically just think about, oh, this is a tourist trap, right? I think because things get a negative connotation about being a tourist trap, but whereas tourists can enjoy it, but it's a place where, you know, the locals would go. I know that you could never do it all, but having a few days to spend in each of these regions seems like it would give you a good overview of Argentina.
Perhaps this is a trip that we could tack on to the front of our Antarctica trip. So if we can convince Santiago to go on our listener cruise, we could do Argentina on the front.
And what would be awesome is then anybody else who joins us too, then we could take advantage of his knowledge and expertise as well.
All right, Santiago, we got your 2026 plans for you. Hearing Santiago talk about all of the great food in Argentina really has me hungry to return there sometime in the near future. I do remember all of the great coffee shops scattered around the city. You should definitely put Buenos Aires on your bucket list of places to visit. What else should we do in Argentina? Send me an email, scott@sunshinetravelers.com. I always look forward to hearing from you and being able to share this information back with our other listeners. When you are looking at booking your reservations for this trip, we like to use booking.com.
You can choose from over 1 million properties worldwide, from cozy country homes to sleek city apartments. Find the best deals with their price match promise. Enjoy great stays at lower cost. And because flexibility matters, book with confidence knowing that you can cancel with ease. And make informed choices with millions of reviews from fellow travelers. Start your adventure now. Visit sunshinetravelers.com/booking to book your perfect stay. Using these affiliate links to book your experiences and travel helps support our podcast, allows us to continue to provide new content each week. Please consider using these links when booking your next travel. There is no extra cost to you, and we are compensated through the affiliate.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and will find some inspiration to help you with your travel journeys. Please consider going on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. The more 5-star reviews we have, the more likely we are to be featured and discovered by others. Make sure to follow or subscribe to our podcast to be notified of new episodes as they are released. You can find us on Instagram as Sunshine Travelers Podcast. Remember, that is Travelers with 1 L. Most importantly, share it with your friends to help them catch the travel bug. You never know, they may become your greatest travel companion.